How you doing? I'm Kevin O'Hara for alcoholmastery.com. I just wanted to make a quick video just on some of the bonkers stuff that's going around. I wanted to give you a bit of my perspective on things. My perspective is that we don't always control what happens, right? But we do control how we respond. How do you do that? It's a challenge, right? You can prepare for what might happen, but in the grand scheme of things, anything can happen. So what are you going to prepare for? A better response, a much better alternative is that you can respond to what's actually happening right now. I mean, you can't control what life throws at you, but you can control how you respond. Now, are you going to respond by thinking, this is a shit fest and it shouldn't be happening? Right? What good is that going to do? It's happening, right? I see this alternative universe meme going around a bit, right? And it's a bit of a diversion for sure, right? But this is our current reality, whatever it is for you at that moment. For me, I live in Europe, I live in Spain, and many parts of Europe are in virtual lockdown. Here in Spain, we can only go out for work, for medical purposes, for food, to go back home again, Esther's gone at the moment. She's taken somebody down to the hospital, an elderly neighbour of ours, who is on her own, and she was afraid of going into the hospital. Esther speaks a bit of Spanish, and this lady doesn't. And she just sent me a text back saying the lady was allowed in the hospital, but she wasn't, because she hasn't got an appointment. So even though she went down with her, and I suppose it's going to do a bit of good. But anyway, do you know what? I've got a good home to go back to, right? It's clean. It's got a nice bed. It's got a place to sit and to relax. It's got a nice kitchen with food in the fridge and on the shelves. We've got 2 toilets. We've got a garden. I've got Esther at home. We've got Bowsy and Murphy, the 2 poochers. I've got my son, who's a Skype call away. I work online, so I have a job to come home to. I'm healthy, so is everyone I know. My family, my friends, everyone in our Habits Unplugged community so far, thankfully, is healthy. I hope everyone listening to this is healthy and well. But there's plenty of people out there that don't have any of these things. There are plenty of people out there who are going to lose many of these things in the near future because of what's happening right now. 2 weeks ago, we were on holiday in Andorra, and on the way back we spent a weekend in Barcelona on holiday, vacation. Very nice, right? Before all this shit kicked off. And it was lovely. A nice hotel. We had great food wherever we went. We found vegan restaurants. We even went to see Barcelona playing a game of football, and Messi, right there in front of us, scored a penalty. And we took strolls around the city, along the city streets. I mean, it's one of the best cities in the world for architecture, and just that sense of the modern with the old. Down the Ramblas, there's so many people down there, so many tourists. Down by the Sagrada Familia is one of Gaudi's, monuments. It's a church that is not built. They're building it, and they don't reckon it's going to be built for another couple of decades. The amount of money that's going to be put into that, but it's a different perspective. But as we're walking around the city, one of the things that really struck me was the amount of people who were sleeping in doorways, homeless, right? I live out here in the sticks, in the middle of nowhere, in the countryside, where we're 5 or 6 kilometers away from the nearest town. So we can walk there and walk back, drive there in 5 minutes and we're back. But we don't see any homeless people here. We don't see any homeless people in the nearest little town. While we were there was a women's march, the 200,000 people marching through the city. And I'm not making any judgments or anything to saying anything about the march in general, but I felt that there was a big moral contrast between what was happening there and the homelessness there in the city. And I think even more recent events make this even more apparent. There's 40,000 homeless people on the streets here in Spain on any given night. And how many of homeless people are in France, in Germany, in Italy, in England or Ireland, in the US, Canada, Australia. And that's just in the West, right? I would imagine that this problem is much, much worse in countries who don't have great wealth. And like I say, we're on this state of lockdown at the moment. This, I can't remember what they call it here. Anyway, it's a state of emergency. And we're being told to stay in our homes, to stay off the streets. And it makes you think, what, 40,000 people here in Spain, and God knows how many people in the Western world are on the streets now, who are living on the streets. What do they do? Where do they go? How can a homeless person stay at home, stay off the streets when their home is actually on the streets? I'm in my home. I'm not trapped. I have plenty of opportunities to get stuff done around here, to fix the fence, to read, to watch Netflix, to prepare what I'm going to do over the next month or the next year or the next 5 years, to think, to spend time with Esther, with the dogs, to chat to my son in Ireland. There's people out there who have nothing, who have nobody. They're on their own. And imagine what that's like. Who's there to comfort these people, to allay their fears, to tell them everything's going to be all right? Imagine for a moment what it would be like to not only be homeless and vulnerable, but to be sick, homeless, and even more vulnerable. What do? Do they hide? Overall, from many different angles, on a brighter note, I've got a sense that this just might be something that can bring us together as human beings who are not just citizens of our own countries and our own towns, but citizens of the world. This is something that I've never felt in my lifetime, and that's a sad state of affairs, isn't it? I can see people, because of this, opening their eyes to what really matters, not useless chatter and rhetoric, but real communication and real understanding. And you can see this coming out and emerging in small pockets around the world. I've seen videos on YouTube of Italians and Spanish coming out and singing together on their balconies because they're trapped. Recently we saw, Esther was showing me that there was a Facebook messages and YouTube videos as well, with people coming out at a certain time in the evening. I think yesterday it was at 10 o'clock, in the cities and towns throughout Spain. And I think they're doing the same thing in Italy, where they're collectively applauding the people on the front line, the doctors and the nurses and that kind of thing. So, everyone is in this together, in this situation, which is going to affect the whole world, right? There is no division. There might be still a form of division in people's minds, but what's happening proves that we're all the same, right? This virus, it doesn't give a flying fuck who you are or what you do or how much money you've got in the bank. Doesn't care what team you support, what colour your skin is, what side of some imaginary border that you happen to live on. This virus, if it gets to you and you're weak enough, it's going to fuck you over just the same, regardless of who you are. I remember my grandfather years ago when I was a kid, and I vaguely remember him, but I always remember him talking about the bombings in London, the Blitz during the war. He was a firefighter, and I'm not sure if he was a full-time firefighter or if he was drafted in because they just needed people. The Blitz was where Hitler thought he could bomb submission out of England by blasting London with bombs night after night after night. And all he did was lit a fire under the asses of all the Londoners, because they banded together and they became stronger. And that applies to any difficult situation. If you want to defeat something, you do it with strength. There are men and women, doctors and nurses and interns and orderlies, cops, first responders of all kinds who were out there right now at this moment while we're inside of our houses. They're putting their lives on the line to protect and fight for us, for you and me, and for everyone else. They're on a war footing. There's no bombs and there's no soldiers attacking us, just a tiny organism that we can't see. One person that I read about was a guy called, I think his name was Roberto Stella, and he was the president of the Order of Doctors, I think, in Lombardy, Italy, where, they just had a huge outbreak. A lot of people died. And he was in his late 60s, and he was tending his patients, and he started to suffer the symptoms and went into intensive care himself, where he died, right? So this is a guy who died in the line of duty, and there's many people that are going to go through the same thing. And all we're asked to do is to sit in our comfortable homes, on our sofas, on our asses, We can do this. This is something that we can do, and let everyone else get on with their job. Right, because this channel is all about alcohol, here's my take on that, right? I think this is even more reason to say to yourself, right, I've got to look after my body. It's really the only one that I've got, and I'm the only one who can really decide what I put inside of my body, right? Alcohol, it weakens your immune system no matter what you think about this, right? And so not putting the alcohol into your body is a great start. Everyone knows the damage that it causes. I harp on about this all the time. One of the reasons I stopped was because of the pains I was getting in my side, but the physical damage, the mental damage that I was getting was just unreal. And it could have got worse and worse and worse. I'd hate to think where I would have been now if I hadn't stopped drinking. So, they've closed the pubs around here, the pubs and the restaurants and all the shops, everything that's unnecessary. And they've closed these things indefinitely. We went down, we had a funny thing, because the Indian, we still go down to one of our favourite restaurants around here is an Indian restaurant, and we go down there most often to get a takeaway and bring it home, sit in front of the telly, watch something on Netflix and just munch away, But every so often we go down there and we sit there, but we got a message off them the other day saying that they were closed and they were still open for takeaways, so that we had to come and park up outside, and then when we were outside we had to give them a call to say that we're outside. We called them. I went up outside the door, I had my phone in my hand. He came out opened up the shutters, sort of came out underneath the shutters with this couple of bags of Indian takeaway and his box, for what do you call it, the card reader to take the payment and stuff. And I said to him, have you got my drugs? And he just looked at me and he said, drugs? And I started laughing. I says, it just feels like we're doing something naughty, like a drug deal, And I don't think he got me, but anyway, it was just funny because the whole street has got loads of restaurants in it and everything's closed down. But every so often you see a shutter going up and, a pizza coming out underneath the shutters. So it's just weird. But I've heard they made the decision as well back in Ireland, where I used to drink, where all this badness in me started, right? And 7 years ago, I would have been devastated. The only thought I have now is, I think about the staff, right? And, those people who are not going to get paid now. I mean, Esther she worked most of her career as in that business, so she was either a waitress or she was behind the bar serving. So those people, a lot of them, especially here in Spain, they're on very minimal contracts. So, if they're going to get paid anything, it's going to be the minimal amount. And, some people are going to lose their jobs over this. Some businesses are going to close. But 7 years ago, my focus would have been on the amount of time that I would have had to spend at home, boring myself, stupid, having no fun because everything's closed. What am I going to do now, And, I just have to sit here and take stock, to feel how amazing it is for myself from a personal perspective, of how much you can advance your life in every area just by making one simple change. And I go back to that binary decision that I talk about all the time. There are only two alternatives in this, right? You either take action or you don't take action. The decision to stay locked up in the prison of alcohol or to become alcohol freed. Right? Every time you take a drink of alcohol, it's a vote to keep yourself a prisoner. It's a vote for the consequences that come with that decision. Now today, because I stopped poisoning myself 7 years ago, I feel so much more capable physically and mentally, especially in terms of positive mental changes, positive mental attitude, if you like. Just that attitude change is amazing. There is no gain, no benefit, no profit, no advance or payoff. There's no advantage that you get from alcohol. I know it's difficult when you're in that habit, when you're in that behavior. It's difficult to see outside of the box when you're stuck inside of it. Maybe closing the pubs, for me, will have a positive effect in terms of people drinking. Maybe some people will suddenly start peeking out of the box that they seem to have been trapped in all these years. And despite how bonkers the world seems to be right now, maybe this is the opportunity to stick their heads out and to take a look and see just how mad their lives have been up until this time. So, you're always responsible for how you act. It doesn't matter how you feel. Don't let your emotions overcome your intelligence. In terms of what's going on right now, I think the best advice, and I saw this coming by as a meme the other day, and it said, act as if you're infected and you don't want to pass it on, not as if you're trying to avoid being infected. And I think that's, it's amazing what will change, how your perspective will change, and what that will do to your perspective, what it'll do to how you think and how you behave, how you treat other people. Just thinking along those terms, like I'm the one that's infected and I don't want to pass it on to somebody, rather than, stay away from me, I don't want to get infected by you. Do you get what I mean? So, what we control matters. That's how we started this thing off. How we conduct ourselves matters. We're talking about something which is contagious, but hopefully when this is all over and done with, as a collective unit, human beings will be in a better place because of what we've been through together. Right? Hopefully we realize that there's a lot worse going on in the world right now. Before any of this came about us, there's a lot worse going on. Like I said, when you look at the perspective of the homeless people, just from that perspective, look at how many other people are worse and worse. Going through Barcelona, there was a guy, and he was maybe in his 60s, late 60s, and he was in a doorway, an abandoned doorway, and he had a single mattress put up against one side of this alcove that he was in, and he was using the door handle or the door knob as a hanger for a bath gown, like a dressing gown, like something that you find in a hotel, and he had a pair of slippers there. And he was packing up his shit for the night and stuff and stacking it away in the corner. And that was him making the best of his what was happening to him, It was just something that struck me, It was a weird thing. I was talking to this with Esther yesterday, and it sort of was in danger of becoming overwhelmed, because it was just one of those things that, it puts things into perspective for you sometimes, Because contagion itself comes in many different forms. We have physical contagion, this physical contagion that's happening to us right now. But anger and mistrust and all those negative stuff, that's also contagious. But so is laughter and acceptance, right? All of these good stuff can also be contagious. You control what you think. You control what you put into your body. You also control what you put out from your mind. Now, everything is on the move. Everything, it's always on the move, regardless of what we are. There's change in the world all the time. And sometimes all we can do is to go along with the flow. At other times, we can alter the flow just by the way we think, by what we put out there ourselves. This is not the first time in our planet's history that a pandemic has hit us, right? And it's not going to be the last. But it's the first time that putting ourselves into isolation, self-isolation, still affords us this opportunity to reach out through our technology. We can chat to each other. We can, we can see each other. I can call my son and Skype him and see my granddaughter. Whether it's across the road or whether it's on the other side of the world. When I talk to my son, it's like he's around the corner, because it just doesn't feel like he's a couple of thousand miles away. Even though we're physically isolated from each other, we're still all connected. So we're truly not alone. We can use all this tech, all this modern gadgetry that we've got nowadays, all, these websites, the social media, to say hello to somebody who might be physically alone, to ask if they need anything, right? We can use the tech to learn something, to use this time of isolation to better ourselves, so that when the bonkers time comes to an end, we've got a plan of what we're personally going to do. My life since I stopped drinking alcohol has been to work towards the best possible version of myself, to live, or to try and live the best possible life that I can live. And I'm not sure if I'm ever going to get there, but it's a goal, and it's the journey that matters the most. And what it took to get me to see sense was a personal rollover, right? Turning myself and my life upside down so I could reset myself and I could see the possibilities that were there in front of me. And it wasn't something that I gratefully accepted. It was something that was really forced on me, right? But I was very glad for it. So to see this from a different perspective, maybe, hopefully, we'll all come out of these times with a fresh sense of the real honest possibilities for us as individuals and as a species. Everyone has their part to play. Just ask yourself what you control and what you don't control. What do you control the most? Your mind, your reactions, your responses, your perspective. So stay safe, everyone. Wash your hands a lot. Stay physically isolated. It's for the good of everyone else, right? Especially the vulnerable people in our communities. Listen to what sensible people are saying. I find the best information for me is coming out of places like the World Health Organization. Help spread some kindness, some laughter. Be patient and help spread that patience, and be generous. Take care of yourself. Stay safe. Keep the alcohol out of your mouth. Onwards and upwards. I'll talk to you soon. Bye now.